Welcome to the Shaping Portsmouth podcast. Shaping Portsmouth is a collaboration of key Portsmouth businesses transforming Portsmouth together.
Hello and welcome to this podcast from the Digital Resilience Department at Shaping Portsmouth. My name is Lauren Strong. I am currently in placement with the company doing research and content creation. I also study criminology and cybercrime at the University of Portsmouth. Joining me today is our guest who will introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here and thank you for inviting me. My name is Dr. Vasileios Karagiannopoulos. I'm an associate professor in Cybercrime and Cybersecurity at the University of Portsmouth and the co-director of the Center for Cybercrime and Economic Crime.
Thank you, Vas, for coming. So today we'll be discussing cybersecurity and cyber threats in relation to small and medium enterprises, as well as individuals. So, Vas, what's the current threat landscape towards such organizations and people at home?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a very complicated threat landscape because we are experiencing the introduction of some more advanced technologies in everyday life nowadays, both for businesses and for individuals, and for cyber criminals to utilize as well, that are perhaps not just making the threat landscape wider, but also a lot more sophisticated. I'm assuming we're going to discuss AI more explicitly a bit later, but obviously the introduction of AI is creating new opportunities for cyber criminals. We are seeing a lot in terms of phishing scams. And phishing scams are very, very common. They're very diverse. They take advantage of anything that might be in the news that will make people click, from the war in Ukraine, for example, or the new elections and the upcoming elections, all the way to something that might be a lot more everyday, such as a new kind of technological development or some new tools that people can use at work. Or a new game that might have come out on an everyday kind of user basis. So phishing is, and it has been probably the most popular avenue for not just stealing information, but also creating, let's say, open doors for cyber criminals to attack businesses with a lot of different types of attacks. Another very popular attack is ransomware. Ransomware is attacking perhaps more organizations rather than individuals. And what ransomware does is essentially encrypts the information that the organization has in its possession, in its servers and networks, and it locks the users out of their devices. To be simplistic about it. And then the cyber criminals would require some sort of ransom paid, usually in cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin or Ethereum, or more exotic ones sometimes, in order to release that information back to the organization. Now, what we've seen is that with more sophisticated ransomware as well, we have the opportunity, or the criminals have the opportunity, to exfiltrate the information they're encrypting before they encrypt it. And that means that they can then do a second kind of extortion attack against the organization, where they require more money in order to prevent them from releasing that information to the public domain. And that is quite a potent attack, not only because it prevents the organization from functioning properly if you don't have access to your resources and your information, but it can also involve a very large kind of sum for getting back into business, let's say. Beyond that, we do have denial of service attacks against organizations that are essentially very large floods of information being targeted at particular websites and taking business websites out. And that means they're not accessible, you can't operate properly. and then you have to pay the criminals some money in order for them to stop doing it. These are some of the main threats, and obviously we've got, from a user perspective, we've got a lot of fraud and scam attacks, romance fraud being a very major kind of attack, or cyber extortion being another major attack that is taking advantage of people, maybe exposing themselves on video or photos, and then the cyber criminals would ask them for money in order not to share these photos that might be nudes or sexually explicit, let's say, in some ways, with the families of the victims or the business associates of the victims.
Yeah. I was thinking it through earlier. It's quite overwhelming area of people, especially if, you're so busy with setting up businesses or you're at home life. So it can all be quite overwhelming for people. What can people do then to protect themselves and their businesses?
Well, I mean, it's a very complex question. So let's start with the businesses, and then we can move to individuals, I guess.
Yeah.
They're very much interlinked as well. So I guess in terms of the businesses, what we are seeing is that there is an effort for business owners to educate themselves a little bit more, and become a little bit more aware of the threats and what they can do about it. But we are still seeing that perhaps the smaller businesses don't have the time or the resources, or they feel they don't have the time and the resources to dedicate to cybersecurity, either because they feel that they are too small, let's say, for the cyber criminals, and cyber criminals would not really target them, which is not true, or they feel that they don't have the time to spend on something that's very technical, as they feel. So cybersecurity as a term is generally considered very jargonistic and very technical, and that puts people off in terms of making the effort to get more educated and implementing some technical controls, perhaps, in their organization. There are certain initiatives that the government is promoting, like Cyber Essentials, the NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Center, that is sharing a lot of guidance and advice and even tools that businesses can utilize to become better prepared for any incident or prevent any attacks, or scan and consider their defenses in terms of technical perspectives. Another aspect is obviously staff education. It is crucial to have up-to-date and constant staff education, because the threat landscape constantly changes and develops, and staff need to be informed about what they need to look out for in terms of phishing scams, in terms of how ransomware happens, and so on. So I think in that respect, perhaps we need to engage more with the free resources, and try to see cybersecurity not just something that's exotic and only big businesses need to do, but something that is part of everyday security, in the same way that we lock our office door when we go back home from work. Cybersecurity and implementing cybersecurity controls are the equivalent of locking our office door. You wouldn't leave your office unlocked and go back home without really being concerned about what would happen to your organization if someone could walk into your offices and have access to all their documents there. In the same way, you wouldn't really leave your computers open for anyone to access, would you? So I think identifying the free advice and support that is out there is really critical.
Yeah.
From a user perspective, I think there's a lot of different things that we can do in terms of making sure, and this is relevant for businesses as well, making sure that the devices are up to date, in terms of having the latest kind of updates for our software and operating systems that have crucial security updates and patches, having some sort of firewall or antivirus software that would protect us from the very basic kind of attacks, against our devices, and obviously keeping up to date, keeping informed in terms of what is out there in terms of cybersecurity threats, and taking 5 minutes to think about whether a message is legitimate, whether a request to pay some money to someone or provide some confidential information or username and password information is legitimate, or whether it is coming from someone who is trying to do some harm.
I've seen quite a few resources now on LinkedIn and NCSC promoting new action plans for individuals, businesses, but they've also seems like they're releasing more things for children to interact with to stay safe online. So we have some of those resources now on the website, and we're definitely promoting more of that. So I think that's amazing that NCSC are definitely advertising those resources to people.
Yeah, I think the NCSC is doing great work. We've done work with the NCSC previously relating to SME cyber awareness and how the NCSC should campaign in order to educate businesses, because initially a lot was being done, but it wasn't properly communicated. And I think it is important that the NCSC is continuing and spreading that kind of effort, not just to businesses, but obviously to young people as well.
I think we'll move on to our final question. I think the buzzword the past 2 years, artificial intelligence. How are cyber criminals using this? And can smaller businesses use it to protect themselves, or is it just for larger corporations to use?
Yeah, again, very interesting question, because we are seeing a lot of different ways that AI can be utilized by cyber criminals. I won't get too technical. I'll mention the two very basic ones. One is obviously using applications like ChatGPT, what we call large language models, in order to create more convincing phishing emails and scam messages more generally. We tend to say that sometimes phishing emails will have grammar mistakes, or the language will not be as good, or they will be easier to spot because there will be some issues with how they are designed and structured. And obviously using ChatGPT and similar applications can allow cyber criminals to create scams in multiple languages that sound very convincing, and they can be constantly refined in certain ways. There are safeguards and controls in applications like this that would prevent them from creating a phishing scam explicitly, but cyber criminals can find ways of giving instructions that would not clearly state that this is meant for criminal purposes. So they can create messages that would be legitimate, but obviously they can integrate a link to a malware or a website that they would like to use to trap their victims, for example, within a legitimate message that ChatGPT has created. The other tool is obviously generative AI, and what people might have heard of as deepfakes. So this is essentially a very convincing copy of someone's voice or even video along with a voice. And that can be used in what we call phishing, so voice phishing. So someone calls you and they pretend to be your child, for example, asking for money because they're in a difficult situation, or the police or someone else anyway. And obviously when we have video, this becomes even more convincing, and it can be used to spread misinformation or trick people into thinking they're speaking with someone that they're not speaking with. Romance fraud, for example, and fraudsters of this type can use generative AI to create a lot more convincing messages for their victims. So these are some of the ways that cyber criminals can use to maybe trick people and organizations into thinking they are speaking to legitimate users when they're not. In terms of using AI to protect ourselves, of course, we have seen that cybersecurity companies are implementing AI tools in their kind of cybersecurity products. So this is becoming a booming industry at the moment, where all the security products are implementing some aspect of AI either as an analytical tool for data in terms of spotting anomalies in how users behave within a network, or even in terms of spotting malware when it's attacking a particular kind of organization's networks. I wouldn't say it's very easy for small organizations to utilize AI on their own in terms of protecting themselves from cyber threats. But there are tools out there that would implement AI in terms of becoming a lot more efficient in terms of cybersecurity.
Amazing. Thank you, Vas, for sharing your expertise today. That brings us to the end of the podcast. If you'd like to know more about Digital Resilience Programme, please visit us on shapingportsmouth.co.uk. Thank you for listening.
This podcast was brought to you by Shaping Portsmouth, working to make Portsmouth the #1 UK city in which to invest, live, learn, work and visit. To find out more, please visit shapingportsmouth.co.uk. This podcast was supported by Spark Community Space.